It's 12:09, and this is our regular meeting. And we have a quorum with 4 people present, 5, and we have no cases, but we do have 3 communications. East Park Drive right-of-way. Mr. Saroy.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioner.
Oh, wait a minute, I forgot to. See, you can't have amateurs doing this. First we'll go for disposal of the minutes, disposition of the minutes, disposal. Same thing. File those babies. Okay, does anyone have a correction or an addition? Okay.
I move to adopt.
Second, anybody?
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. And, okay, 3 abstentions. 3 votes and 1 abstention, and there were no votes because we did the math. I did the math. Trying hard. No cases, and now we have communications. East Park Drive right away. Mr. Sarai.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners and public. These are communications of prior cases and existing cases. East Park Drive is the right-of-way case, which was in 1604. This is Muntean Healthcare, and it has to do with applying a right-of-way with the access to the drive. And I do believe that Safety Service Director Andy Stone can speak to it much better than I can.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Soroyce. If you look at the document attached to one of our emails that you have here, part of your packet, there's a plat of a public right-of-way. So there is a signatures page, and then there is the actual plat of survey on the second page. And this is a unique situation here in the city that we don't do very often, which is to dedicate new public right-of-way. We typically do that when we have a housing development or some other sort of subdivision where there will be a plat, and the plat comes through the Planning Commission, and then we either recommend for approval or disapproval to go to City Council for them to adopt, and then that turn into a new permanent major subdivision in the city of Athens. In this case, this is a city-desired establishment of new public right-of-way, and the purpose here is to turn, this is something I've been working on for a number of months now, is to turn East Park Drive from a private road on public property to a proper public road. And there's a couple different elements of why we want to do this. Number one, it has addresses on it as East Park Drive. Number two, if it remained a private road on a public property, any type of utility that travels in this space has to go through this space by easement, which is a stronger level of rights granted to that utility than occupation by permit of a public right-of-way under ORC Chapter 4939. So in this particular situation, there are several properties served off of East Park Drive by various utilities, both city-owned and private utilities. The New City Swimming Pool is served off of this area. The dog park on the east side and the city laboratory is served off this area, and the wastewater plant are served off of this area by both city utilities and private utilities. But also, there are several pieces of private property. The hotel that's down there, a portion of the CVS pharmacy, which is down there, and now the new healthcare and architect's office at the end of East Park Drive in the former IBX towing property that now is what we've been referring to as either BDT or Muntean, depending on which of those owners we're talking about at the current time. That building is almost done, and we had Title 41 review of that building, and it came through this body earlier. And in the process of doing that review, we realized that that building was served by an easement established back in the 50s or perhaps even earlier. That was an easement granted by the previous owner of the property where the city swimming pool currently is. to East State Street. So if you look at the actual physical description of where that easement lies, their right to frontage on a public road goes right through the middle of the new city swimming pool, which in reality is not where people actually drive and to get to that parcel, but that's where it lies. So we said at the time of that Title 41 review that we wanted the property owner to vacate that right or to give up that right and instead be granted a new easement from public frontage on East Park Drive, because that's where the address is.
That's correct.
So in this case, and that's where it actually is, if you think about that corner of the community center back there where they drive across the corner of the community center, that's where people are actually driving. But we're trying to make it proper. In this case, though, we'd have to have a public road there for them to have frontage, and that's what this does, is it establishes East Park Drive as a proper public road, public right-of-way. One other nuance to this, is somewhat related, is when the city swimming pool was built, American Electric Power had to bring new power in. They sought an easement from the city up East Park Drive to bring power in. I didn't want to grant an easement from the city up East Park Drive because at any future point, we can compel a private utility company to move if they're in a right-of-way by permit. But if they're in a right-of-way by easement, it's at the expense of the public agency if we require them to move. And so AEP said, okay, we'll go by permit with the understanding that the city was going to plat East Park Drive as a proper public right-of-way. So that's the background. This is a step coming through this body, establishing East Park Drive as a public street, all the way out to East State Street with a proper plat, and then once the Planning Commission approves it, we go to City Council, just like another major subdivision.
That's correct. The latest emails I have is from the new city engineer, Bob Heady, sorry. And it says, upon review, it appears that they have addressed our concerns. I'm satisfied with the plat. The plats you have in front of you do not have the surveyor seal or actual signatures, so I will be awaiting those, and we'll bring them forward to the next committee, commissioners meeting to be forward to the city council.
Any questions?
No.
I have a question for Andy, and it's on a tangential thing, but when does that stop me? I would like to know how wide the right-of-way for the railroad is here and how you established it when you were crossing it.
So this
The B&O, the old
Yep,
B&O.
yep. This right-of-way does not cross. So the East Park Drive right-of-way remains on the north side of the B&O property throughout. So,
So the B&O didn't end there, though. It continued on.
correct, correct. It just keeps going. But this road ends. This public right-of-way ends. Right?
No, I was trying to figure out just in future how wide the right-of-way is. Cause
I think it's 100 feet in this area.
It's 100 feet plus or minus 100 feet, I think.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes it's 100 feet, sometimes it's nothing. I just wanted to know did you find it on the deeds? This is just a point of information. Oh,
Right.
you didn't have to look, never mind.
No,
Thank
we didn't
you.
have to look on this particular.
Okay, I'm just, because it may come up in future.
It may, absolutely.
You can see some other places where it might be applicable. Okay, Christie, anything? Nope. No? Okay.
So you open Pandora's box, I guess.
Oh, I always
Not
do.
really. So I'm looking on the colored version, and
Oh, it's very nice,
is
yes.
the blue line through the colored version, Andy? I don't know if you have the colored.
Here, Randy.
Oh, you do.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What's your question?
Is that the right of way? The railroad right of way?
It is. It's the north edge of the railroad right away. So, the blue line that shows the edge of East Park Drive.
I see. Okay.
That is the northern edge of the railroad right away. The railroad right away, pretty much the bike path sits about where the tracks were.
Good.
Okay.
So have we communicated adequately in order to send it forward? All we need is the engineers.
I I mean, are we able to vote on this?
No.
No?
We have
No.
to have the engineers.
Yeah, once we get the stamp and all the signatures done, we'll bring it to the next meeting.
Well, we,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, the next meeting's not for another month, is it?
No, it's in
No,
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Will I won't be here.
I won't be here.
Will we have a quorum? Will we be able to reinforce?
I don't know how many people will be here.
I
I
will not
should
be
be.
here.
Oh,
We need to talk about when that is. I mean, my intent was to have this passed today. So we didn't get that done because of that problem. So going forward, we need to figure out how to get that done at a meeting at some point in the next few weeks.
Well, might I suggest that we could pass it provisionally on submission of the,
You could, that's correct, upon,
we do that if
Signatures.
it's not listed as a case on the agenda?
well, it's not, would it ever be a case? Oh, yes, it would. It has a number. Oh, dear.
So this, it's just listed as a communication on the agenda. I think there might be some legal ramifications to,
Only if somebody brings them up.
We could do a special session.
Does it need to get to council for August? Is that the goal? Council needs to approve as well?
I mean, council's got to approve
Yeah.
it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, it just delays it 2 months, basically, because,
Or they
with the
suspend their
absence of-
rules, right?
What's that?
They can suspend their rules.
That too, yeah.
They do it all the time. At
But if
least we
it's a
used
special
to.
session, just needed to approve something, as long as we give adequate public notice, I believe, or
24 hours.
that could be convened, provided that
What-
there's 3
so
planning
what-
commissioners willing to convene.
How much notification would our bylaws say? We need?
Offhand, I'm not sure. I think it's 24
I
or
believe it's
48
24
hours.
hours
Okay.
as well,
I couldn't
24-hour public
remember.
notice. Same with cancellation of a meeting, 24-hour notice.
Unless the snow is 10 feet deep. Okay. So we are now moving on to the next item, which is CAR-T, proposed subdivision.
yes, Commissioners, this is just a communication to update you on this proposal. It's not a proposal, it's already been approved. It was in an ordinance back in '03, if I look up the sheet. So all we did is they came to us, to our office, and they provided us with the old survey that was done. And in speaking with Mr. Stone at some point in time, we wanted them to clean up the property lines, basically. So what they're proposing is the 4 lots, which is approved by ordinance. We have a clean plat description and had approval from Ben Athol. And so there's just some minor things that have to be corrected. But again, it was previously approved by ordinance, so they can go ahead and go forward because nothing else has changed. This is just providing you with information to tell you that's what's going on at that neck of the woods, I guess, if you want to call it that. And that's all that is. Doesn't require any approval on your part, just primarily notifying you that this is possibly going to be going down. If you have any questions.
Are there any, I'll start, are there any issues with Lot 3 and 4 and the floodplain?
No.
No?
It'll have to be permitted, but the floodways,
Yeah.
floodways are not an issue on that side of the track.
Because 2003 was a long time ago.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember it at council, so.
Yep.
Would these be called outlots then?
Yes.
Yeah, well, commercial subdivision.
Commercial subdivision, yeah.
Kristen? Mayor? No. Okay. No other questions? Okay. Do you have enough information to go forward from us? We read it.
That's it, yeah.
Okay.
It'll be in the minutes that you looked at it.
Next item on the agenda, the last one is Harold Avenue lot split Hoon update.
Yes, as you recall from the last or previous meeting, one before, we had Mr. Pearson come in and we had a discussion on whether this lot split should be a minor subdivision or a major subdivision. And we went back to the law director, and she agreed that it was a major subdivision. So we've since pulled their application, and they are in the process of complying with various requests from Mr. Stone, at that time the city engineer. I have yet to receive their application for a major subdivision. I just wanted to relay on that, and Mr. Stone might be able to communicate more on that situation.
I spoke with, we had a meeting with the property owner and Mr. Pearson, who was representing the property owner, about our concerns with the what they're asking, subdivision. And it mainly revolved around access to utilities, both now and in the future, should Ms. Hoon, who's the owner, come into, or Bowen, Bowen, I don't know. What's her last name?
We'll figure it out.
Bowen.
Cassie
Bowen.
Cassie
Married,
Bowen.
last name Bowen. If she were to divest of the property once it was, and so we talked through the easements that needed to be shown on there and how they needed to be shown, to include the city raw water line easement that crosses through the middle of it. That's been there since probably the 1930s. That need to be updated so that I'm satisfied that if she divests of the property once it splits, that the city's not in a pinch. And so I haven't seen their revised plat of survey, but we saw the plat of survey that they had submitted, and we marked it all up and sent it back to them, and we'll see when it comes through. And if that comes through with their application for major subdivision.
That's correct.
And if we're satisfied with it, I think that we can probably approve it.
That's correct. That's basically it.
Any other questions or issues? All right, we've completed that section. All three communications have been read and discussed to the extent possible. Now we go to the report of the city planner and Mr. Saroy. Paul?
Thank you. The city's comprehensive plan process is still moving forward. We just last week completed the fourth and fifth of 5 neighborhood workshops. Within the 5 workshops, we had about 115 or 120 people in total attend. We got a lot of great feedback and guidance for each of the neighborhoods. My interns right now are working on putting all of that together into some basic reports for me and some summary documents. And once we have all of that completed, we will then set up an opportunity for people to give feedback either online, or they can give us some additional thoughts. There's plenty of people that were unaware of meetings, of course, or could not attend because of other items on their lives, and so we're going to give another opportunity for people to contribute without feeling like they need to show up at a meeting. But all in all, I was very pleased with the amount of information that we received and the time that people spent. We had several people who spent almost 2 hours using our interactive maps, so I thought that was great, and I felt like we got a pretty good representation of each of the neighborhoods. And once we move forward with that, we will also be starting to take a deeper look into each of the city's neighborhood or corridors, the commercial corridors. So that's Columbus Avenue or Columbus Road, East State Street, Stimson Avenue, Richland Avenue, Union, and Uptown. So we'll be taking a better look at each of those areas of town. And then moving into late summer, early fall, we're going to do one last neighborhood meeting specifically to try to target the off-campus neighborhood of the Mill Street, Palmer Street area, hoping to get some students involved as well, and maybe do a workshop on campus as well, to get a little bit more feedback and make sure we're getting some off-campus housing contributions from students. Thank you.
Mr. Saroy?
Yes, just wanted to remind public that grass and weeds are still around, and they're not going away. We normally give a 5-day notice, so when the public submits something to public stuff or calls us up about grass and weeds that are high and going overboard, we normally send the owner, the property owner, or the property manager, and they have 5 days to correct it. Now, if it's not corrected, then we normally get the city contractor, mowing contractor, to go in and cut the grass. We've had a lot of rains recently, and we're working diligently to address a lot of areas that have tall grass and weeds, and also addressing the public stuff inquiries about grass and weeds. Next is we want the public to please be aware of open containers in their backyards, jars, old flower pots, old tires, new tires, kids' toys. With the recent rains, people don't think about dumping these out, and they can harbor mosquitoes. And that really, we've had a lot of inquiries about that on public stuff about mosquitoes and alleyways, where we've been finding areas of old flower pots and tires and addressing those to get them dumped. So if you have any ponding in your backyards or in your alleyways, please try to correct those, and so we can reduce the mosquito population. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
I do. Rick, can we talk a little bit, maybe it's an open discussion about, with the Planning Commission and the two of you, about the topic you and I were discussing the other day with zoning on university property.
Yes, thank you for reminding me of that. We're looking at educational institutions and the zoning that is required. Currently, we have a higher university that is looking at putting a building down on Union Street, and that property really isn't zoned for educational institution. And then we were talking about looking at rezoning those for educational institutions. Any property owned by OU that is not in an educational institution, this is tasking for me here, to get this all out, to look at rezoning that and getting that on the map so it's said and done, and we don't have to go between business and manufacturing. It's just an educational institution. So I'd like to present that, and Paul can correct me or add to that, bring forward to the Planning Commission to address that at the next meeting.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah, we looked at this, and what brought it forward is the HCOM building sits on a couple parcels that are split zoned right now. One is B3, one is M. Yeah, HCOM, the Heritage College.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Heritage College.
so, and then you look at a lot of the rest of the campus is zoned R3.
And it shouldn't be.
And it shouldn't be, no, you're right. And then you've got this section that was, the ridges, that we had to come up with some sort of designation, and you probably were here when it annexed.
Yeah.
And so we decided to come up with a new designation for that zone of EI, educational institution, which is unique to that parcel. Makes sense probably to apply that zoning to a large part of the university. Now, one thing, we don't have any bulk controls associated with EI. So whereas all of our other zone designations have bulk controls associated with them to give guidance to mainly consultants who are working for the university doing building design and site layout. They want to communicate, and all indications are they want to comply with city zoning code and be delivered to, in their planning and follow instructions. They just want to know what it is. And it would be a major shift, I think, to go and pick up all the university lands, or at least the appropriate university lands, and move them to EI. I think we'd want to go ahead and assign some bulk controls to that zone, and I think that would be information that this commission would vote on and then forward to the council for the permanent change. It's come to light here recently with the OU development in that Union Street corridor, and I think it makes sense to try to clean that whole thing up.
You mean between the Habitat House and the rest? Is that a development area you're talking about?
No, I'm talking
Because if that happens, boy, am I going to be upset with the visuals.
Sure.
Impairment.
No, I think I'm more speaking about the stretch where Happy Cat used to be,
Yeah.
The HCOM, and then also the engineering going into the West Union Street office complex, former HGL Center, former McBee's factory. Those two major initiatives, really, and to a lesser extent the Ridges redevelopment, are circumstances where university consultants are coming to the city going, hey, what about zoning in this area, and we want to comply, and we're going, well, it's this zone here, it's this zone here, and your R3 over here, and your EI up there. That doesn't mean anything. So I think we could use this as an opportunity to make those changes.
Anybody, you have something to say?
I'm just thinking through, what you were just describing. We currently have 3 downtown redevelopment districts, and trying to think through, does that impact those? But I don't see what the impact would be.
We talked about maybe not all university property would be appropriate to zone EI.
Because some of it's income producing.
Yeah, like East State Street.
Right.
You know, that's a
Yeah,
very good
like-
example of where it needs to be.
Like by the roundabout also.
Right. Former,
And that shouldn't be R3. either.
former Woolworths
Yeah.
should stay a B2D zone, even though that's owned by the university. But I think, you know, the campus green shouldn't be R3, like Cutler Hall. But it is, and if you look at our maps, it should have a different designation. And I think there's probably several other places that we should address.
Right. And the conversation we've always had has been, and the EI language,
Lane.
it has to be, the use has to be in relation to the academic, or the mission of Ohio University, or whatever institution it may be. So in a situation where the Ridges is a great example, and what we've said through the planning the whole time has been, if they want to build housing for students up there, that falls under the EI zoning. However, if the university or they want to go into a public-private partnership with a third party and develop housing for me or the planning commissioners or any member of the public, then the EI zoning will not fit for that, and so the developer or the applicant would have to come forward and make a rezoning petition, so that it brings a little bit of control back. But you look at all the R3 areas actually of Ohio University, if the property owner were interested in divesting, then it's good to go for a use that, an R3 use right now. So the EI zoning also gives the city a little bit of long-term control over the divestiture of real estate from Ohio University to private hands. So from a planning perspective, that helps us to better be able to anticipate what zoning might be appropriate based on how the city develops over time.
So I'm curious, is East Elementary, Morrison Gordon, West Elementary, and the middle school, are they EI as well? Or is it just
No,
Ohio University has that designation?
It's only the Ridges real estate at Ohio University. And that language was drafted at the time that the Ridges was annexed into the city. The city schools, I believe, I think all of them are in R1 zone, which is actually, public schools are permitted use in single-family residential zones by right, so.
So before the last comprehensive plan, we had a consultant when they had their dog and pony show that said, well, you don't even have to give them exemptions. You could zone it in such a way that you got what you wanted out of it.
Yeah.
But they screamed and hollered, that group, the old bow tie group, and didn't want it. And we even had a fight about floodplain enforcement at that point in time, we being council, and during Mayor Abel's time. And so I think you have to be careful in a sense about any carte blanche. That would, I think, because of the public-private partnership, as you well identified. But, what if a golf course would come in on the area by the river and would be now a commercial enterprise that gives part of its, those things are so hazy now that it's going to be a problem, I think. I could be wrong. What if they decide to give the, not Baker Center, but the other one, the gymnasium? What happens if they would sublet that or give it, have another manager and have actually, that kind of thing, if the actual building was owned by someone else on university property? I think we have to take that, too, as a possibility.
Convocation Center? Is that what
Yeah,
you're referring to?
I was thinking of the other one.
Ping.
Ping Center.
Yeah.
If like a
Because-
private owner would run it, like Planet
Private
Fitness or something.
contractor.
Yeah, you could see that happening eventually, especially with the way things are going. But I'm a little bit concerned about, I don't think we have to give them a carte blanche exception. Because probably somebody who taught you planning was down here actually promoting that. That you guys give way too much. And we have, but it's not been an issue. That's just my old historical feeble memory working. But I am concerned because even if they bless a senior citizen center, we always said, yeah, but you got to follow zoning because you're going to own property.
Well, we're saying the same thing, I think.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to underline it
Right.
because I think those things change. We had the old bow tie group, and now we have Shauna. We have different people in the position. And I would especially not want to. I mean, how did they acquire that land? How did the university acquire that land is the question. A lot of times the state just gave it to them. The only thing they didn't give is the canal right away because the university wasn't in a position to take it. And they'd really like that one, right? The one that goes over to the pump station, the sewer pump station, goes right through. I mean, there is the main sewer line goes right down that pathway. So it's an untidy mess, I think. But maybe you don't see it that way. I've just been around too long, sorry. Having said...
I'm just going to ask you a follow-up question because it's not clear to me. We have a zoning map that doesn't actually fit a state university at all.
No, you're right.
And we have zoning language that is actually
Lame.
specifically suited for a state university.
It needs to be beefed up, I think. EI.
Maybe so.
EI was just a way to get...
But language that suits a state university, you don't believe that language makes sense for the university, or like the R3 language makes more sense? I'm just trying to clarify where we're coming at here.
Our interests might not be served by EI being as porous and as flexible as it is.
Okay.
Because it butts right up against the city and property owners in the city. And it causes negative externalities outside of the borders of the university in some cases. And that's what zoning's about, trying to prevent that.
Does R3 not do that?
Yeah.
Keeping it as it is?
No, I wouldn't keep it as it is. I would eliminate it. I would go EI, but I would beef up EI.
Beef up EI, okay.
Yeah, I think EI...
That's where we're trying to get.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, because it might work if you leave the interpretation, but what happens when you're gone? You know, because I can tell you, I've seen different generations of interpretation in the university, and sometimes it's helpful to the city, encouraging, other times not. So
hopefully when I'm gone, the city will do just fine.
Been here 200 years, right?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, the next person may have new materials, but may not know what you know. Have that experience. I could be wrong. Wouldn't be the first time, even today. So who would we look at? Who is as intertwined as we are with our land use? Is it Kent? Is it...
I would say the first thing, if
Oxford?
The conversation that was approached was looking at rezoning to the university to come in line with that EI, but I think maybe the first thing to look at is and this was not my initiative, just to be clear, this is some very basic conversations we've had, but probably the first thing to look at would be the EI language.
Yes.
And then say, are we interested in expanding this to a larger part of campus, and what are the pros and cons of doing so?
Well, if it would be good.
And if you're interested in saying you think that the language in there needs to be tightened, then rather than look and see what Kent or Oxford or Morgantown's doing or any other university, let's look at our own code and see what fits for the city of Athens. Now, I am not interested at this specific point of taking that on as a project.
Well, you've got a lot going on.
If the Planning Commission would like to, then we can certainly work on this. But
all right, so you could change them all over to EI and I'd probably vote for it, but I think you ought to strengthen EI as well, or at least make it more conducive because of the...
We should strengthen EI, not
it's intertwined with the city. There's too much overlap between university property and city property, and it doesn't always serve our interests, the city's interests, well. So, and I may be the only one that thinks that, so dismiss me and we'll go on. Because I've just been here and done it, and I've seen it.
Sure.
Okay? So, EI, change it then, but let's change EI too.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it. We'll look at it and look at the details of how it reads now and see what we need to beef up.
Yeah, I wonder if any of them even have a zoning area, like Kent. Does Kent have a zoning? I don't know. I've been there, but I haven't looked at the zoning map. Okay, I'll stop.
I just have one more,
Okay.
one more thing.
Sorry to
just received an email, speaking of carte blanche and things. It's concerning the medical marijuana dispensary on 711 Union. It says, I do not see any conditional or use or special use provisions for these types of facilities. Is this a retail sales building use which could be permitted in the B3 district? Can you confirm this? is the case. I also cannot find any zoning approval forms on your website, which we have, but he just didn't look. It talks about application forms, but I cannot find that tab at all, et cetera, et cetera. We've had some discussions, and we're pretty much going to treat it like a retail because we have no other guidance.
A drugstore?
Right.
Yeah,
A drugstore would be
Right.
fine.
yeah,
Be logical.
that's it.
Kind of what it
It
is.
makes perfect sense to me too.
Yeah.
It's a
And that's how we're
dispensary.
going to address it. I
Is
just
it an
want to
OU land?
No.
bring
Okay.
that forward.
I haven't paid attention to it. I'm not that
And that's all
interested.
I have.
I have a question for you, Mr. Sorois, because I've had people ask me on the street if there's been any updates on the Menards and the Menards property.
I have not received anything since we last spoke 4 or 5 months ago. And that was, I was still working on it, so that's all I have. No,
Okay.
no emails, no notification of anything different.
Okay, because people have been asking, what is the delay, what's going on? I will add to that, with a little sleuthing of somebody on the planning commission,
Driving home from Cleveland.
that at roughly the same time that case was coming before this body, that there was one that went forward in Parkersburg as well in what's called the Everson?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exit
Commons.
179.
Anyway, off of 77, I-77. And again, it was about the same time, looking at the dates, as I was going back chronologically and looking to see when did this come up in Parkersburg, that the timeframes aren't too dissimilar in terms of when there was mention that there was going to be Menards going in off the 77 corridor in Parkersburg. And that still hasn't come to fruition in Parkersburg with that particular facility. But again, I was just curious as to whether you'd heard anything from Mr. O'Neill or anybody else at Menards.
They have 1 year to start the project and 2 years to complete it. So I do believe it's getting close to that time, so I will be notifying him of that, where he would have to request an extension. So
Okay.
hopefully he'll respond and such. Let me know.
Thank you.
There's an ancillary aspect of the city's East State Street project. Has some elements of that project that would work better if Menards was built in conjunction. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen now, but we're going to have to decide how much money to spend on the portion that the city is building in anticipation of whether or not Menards will go. Because if Menards doesn't go, then it's irrelevant whether or not the city, and it mainly has to do with sewer in that area. But if they do go, this is something we would want to do because we can really solve some problems on that far east end if they go, and if we build the portions we need to build on our side now. We're not up against a wall on that decision yet, but it probably within 2 months or so we will be just to have some sort of indication whether or not they're still proceeding.
It has a pump, right?
Menards.
I mean on the other side, down at Holzer.
I'll draw it for you. It's super complicated.
Yeah, because there were other things added. Okay, so now we have opportunity for citizens to speak. Those of you at home could send us a letter. Announcements and other business. Next meeting, July 19th. It seems like we might have a problem with attendance. 3 of us are not going to be here.
I could be here, but if 3 people are going to be gone, it would be pointless for me to show up.
Aren't you going?
It would.
So how about how urgent is it, Andy?
I thought it was on your calendar.
Pretty urgent?
No, I mean,
Semi-urgent?
it's just a matter of trying to finish a task, because there's other tasks associated with it, but it's not the end of the world. It doesn't get done.
It's not the end of the world?
No.
Okay.
And if there were enough to be in attendance to have it earlier of that same week.
Not
in
the
other words,
same week, but
Monday
next
or
Thursday.
Monday or Tuesday of that week, but Wednesday I have.
Well, just so we're clear, the ball's in their court. We need to get those stamped, approved plans, done, so we can get signatures.
So,
Surveyor.
Surveyed, yeah.
okay. Well, it's ambiguous right now, but we may have a special session before our next meeting, which would be what, Patty? In August? August 2nd? Theoretically, we think August 2nd, 2018. Is that right? Correct, I mean?
I think so.
Okay.
That is right.
Having completed all the business on our agenda, we are adjourned.